Good morning and or afternoon.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited about writing today. It's been a kind of a writing less week, so I'm excited to get on board. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm like, yay, someone that's here in Atlanta. I'm like, all right, keep your girl accountable. We're gonna get back into it.
I love to see it. Okay, so is there anything that you want to say about who you are, what you're working on, any credits you have or anything that could help you in terms of like if somebody were to find you, they would
Oh,
know that you're doing this?
yeah. So my name is Jewel Hill, but artistically I go by J Hill. I got that from grad school. That's just what people was calling me in film schools. I was like, okay, I'm gonna take it and run with it.
I'm with it, Jay here.
Director and writer. Um, I'm in Atlanta and I've been here for about a year and some change now. I transitioned here from LA. That's where I was in grad school at. But yeah, currently I'm working on a feature film. And
Nice.
yeah, it's something that we had started working on in grad school, and I was like, I should finish this. Because my professors they really enjoy like what we were reading through so far and everything. I'm like,
Mhm.
I should finish it. Yeah, I've basically done short films. I've been in two of my short films have been in a film festival. One of them I got to be a panelist for. Um,
Congratulations.
I've worked with, thank you. I've worked with HBO Max as a PA, and I've worked with Peacock on Love Island games as a
Okay.
messenger. That was fun. And I was like a job I got like right when I was done with grad school, and then boom, the
What
strike.
happened?
I said,
Oh,
"Dang, why?" Um, so yeah, I'm just here in Atlanta trying to build community, and currently I'm a preschool teacher trying to transition out the classroom. So I actually don't want to do this another year, another
mhm.
school year. Uh so yeah.
Okay. 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 I'm picking up what you're putting down. All right.
Yeah.
What about you, sir? Welcome.
Hey, good morning. Congratulations to you,
Morning.
Hill. And good morning,
Um,
Spade. Yeah, my name is Escarmadi. It's pronounced like a French dish, escargot.
okay.
So that's my first name. So I lived in Atlanta my whole life, but recently, about little over 3 years ago, moved out of Atlanta, moved to San Diego. So I'm in the San Diego Temecula area. I moved up towards Temecula.
Love
But
it.
anyhow, yeah, I'm like probably the newest person in filming. I recently got into it, just trying to find new stuff to do. Coming from Atlanta, coming from a whole different environment, not having the club scene, not having the nightlife, and just tapping into some of my other interests, and which has always been like acting and some of the other things, just watching like different plays and whatnot, theater type stuff is my natural interest. And so I started going to some acting classes here and I got into film class but before then, still now, I currently run a company. My company is like 10 years old, going on 11 years. And pretty much I'm in construction and contracting. And I've been doing that for almost my whole life. So I'm trying to transition out of the construction field, this entrepreneurship and construction, and eventually find my space into either somehow filming, speaking, and all that stuff, and any way it lines up together. But so currently, I'm just pulling some of my old stuff. I have a real active imagination, so um, some of my old filming that I just had in my head, stored in my head. I'm pulling it out now since I've been in this film writing class, and I'm putting it on paper and just trying to see where I can go with
Beautiful. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to
it.
write for about 20 minutes and then we're going to jump in with some questions if you guys have any. Of course, you can ask screenwriting questions, filmmaking questions, career-driven questions. It's just about what you need right now. And if you have any questions, if you get stuck, you can always just hit me up in the chat and we can do like a sidebar conversation. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay. All right. How did that go?
Oh, pretty good. I was just like rereading what I have so far and like making some adjustments here and there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where are you in the process?
Um,
Because
so
you already written it, right? And now you're going back?
I haven't written it all the way. Like it's
Okay.
not done. It's not even like a complete first draft. I'm just rereading and going over what I have so far, and that's like, um, hold on. That's like, yeah, 40 something pages.
Okay. For
Mm-hmm.
into your feature, right?
Yes.
Okay. And
Mhm.
now you're just looking to pick up from there and move to the end?
Yeah, once I like, you're like, okay, so I see where this is going because I haven't looked at this thing in like months. So
Mm. Okay.
from when I last was doing the restructuring or whatever. So I'm like, okay, I see what I like. I see what I like. Okay, this is going well. Okay, all right. Let's fix that right there. Okay, cool, cool. Let's fix that right there. So it's like I'm doing that.
Okay.
And then,
You're giving yourself notes right now.
yeah, and then once I get to where I like left off, then I'm gonna continue because I'm like, okay, now I see where I really, really want this to go.
Okay. Okay. And structurally, where's your skeleton live? Like, do you have an outline that you wrote when you first started writing it? Or where does your
Uh,
painter live?
I believe I have a treatment for it.
Okay.
I have to find it. I
Okay.
have to find it. But yeah, I have a treatment of like how all of it goes. I just have to find it because thank you
Because
for
it's
that.
been a minute. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute, so I'm like, oh, I'm like reading. I'm like, okay, you was in your bag, girl. Okay, ooh,
Okay, you
let's
were doing it right.
let's
Okay,
fix
so
that.
here's my knee-jerk reaction. My worry is that you're going to get to page 48 or whatever, and then continue on. But you've kind of been doing surgery along the way since you've been um rereading it.
Hmm.
So the trajectory of this, you're about halfway through, like almost exactly halfway through. So
Hmm.
the second half of the script, essentially, okay, so if you think of it like a quilt, right?
Hmm.
And you are halfway through the quilt, but before you finish the second half of the quilt, you start like taking some threads out because you kind of see how you want to do it. Then
Hmm.
the second half of the quilt either is going to match the first half of the quilt and you don't make any changes, or it's going to match the second half of the version of the story that you haven't gone back and rewritten yet. You see what I mean?
Hmm.
So I'm wondering if once you get to page 48 in your rereading, what page are you on now?
I'm on 28 right now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm thinking once you get to page 48, that may be a good time as opposed to finishing to the end, like writing on the page to the end. It may be a good time to take a step back and figure out, okay, now based off of not only what I know I've written and the changes I know I want to make, but like how I've grown as a writer since then, because you have, and how I've
Hmm.
matured as a person since then and my life experiences. If
Yeah.
I take a step back and say, what's the best version of the story now? Not undoing what I've done, but um without adding the step of having to rewrite that
Hmm.
first half, there may be a different version of the story that's more sophisticated based on what you can do now
Yeah.
that I think could be save you time from
Hmm.
rewriting this version that's the old version and then going back and doing a new draft. You see what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes
What
perfect
are your
sense.
thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's essentially what I was doing because like, as I'm reading this, I'm already thinking like about where I'm already at, and I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
like it's still a nice, smooth, well-oiled train. I'm like, okay, I'm still vibing, I'm still loving it. Okay, great. I think now now that you mentioned that, I'm thinking like how I want it to end, like after the resolve, after the resolution,
Yeah.
that like once the characters have like they're free, they're good, they're back on track. Post that, what will their new world look like? Because dang, and I think you did ask me what am I writing? Did you? I feel like you did.
Yeah, at the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, so okay, gist of the story. So uh three college friends, HBCU friends, because I went to HBCU for undergrad. I went to A&T. And they go to A&T too. So yeah, they're seniors and they're going on their last spring break trip together as seniors in college. And Shantae, the main character, she gets an idea of where to go from her grandmother. It's like some like mystical falls type of thing. It's supposed to be very beautiful. You know, oh, the water is so nice, nice little cute getaway. When they get there, it's like they're transported into a whole different time where it's like
Oh,
all the black
okay.
people in the town are like dressed in like 1950s, 1960s wear, and it's like, what did we just step into?
Yeah.
Um, everyone's looking at them weird and like it's crazy. So they see that um they find out that they're in a magical town because the mayor did some very wild stuff to somebody to one of the townspeople, levitated that man, and then he just straight up vanished. Yeah. Yeah. So they're like, bro, we gotta get out of here. What the heck is going on? So yeah, essentially their journey is trying to get up out of there.
Okay. 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 So the tone is a little magical realism, horror, maybe thriller
Yes.
tone. Okay.
Very. Hmm.
Okay. And where you are at page 48, you're already on board with everything that's happened. So there's not a lot of surgery that you're doing
Yeah.
going forward. Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah. I'm just reading through to make
Okay.
sure I still I'm like, because it's new eyes. So I'm like, oh, okay, yes, all right. I remember this is how we're going. Okay, still loving it. We're cool. Um, yeah,
Can you do me a favor for the next 20 minutes?
of course.
I want you to try something.
Okay.
So you're familiar with confirmation bias, right?
That sounds familiar, but please.
So basically it's like whenever there's like an idea or a concept that you already have internalized as like truth,
Mm,
then you are more likely to agree that it's truth when it happens out in the world. So, for example, if you get a choice between A or B, but A is something that already resonates with you as truth, you're more likely to agree to A, whether it's true or not.
gotcha. Okay.
Sometimes we do that in our writing, where we read something that we've already written, and because it's already in our voice and it's already our taste, then our confirmation bias will tell us, yes, this is the way it should go. And it's hard for us to imagine any other way.
Mm-hmm.
Something I want you to try in this next 20 minutes is to put that on ice. I think like you're at a perfect time where you're like reignited in that world, but you haven't finished reading all the plot.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could do a word vomit for me, just like paragraphs of what you think is the most compelling version of these three girls going on this trip and what happens to them, then
Mm-hmm.
that'll shake you out of your confirmation bias. Because now, when you wrote that, you were a talented writer, you had great ideas. And as you're absorbing it, it's like, oh, yeah, that's great. But there's a part of you that has grown as a storyteller just by being an adult. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to see if there is something new you can bring to the table that you're not thinking of because of your creative confirmation bias.
Gotcha.
Yeah, let's just try that for the next 20 minutes and just see what happens.
Am
If
I
that's
like right? Am I like writing in the script, or am I like writing like
It could be in a Word document. Just
Okay,
whatever.
great. I'm like, I
Yep.
can
It could
pull up
be,
my notes app on my iPad and just go to town.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Escar,
Yes.
how is it going over there?
It's going good. So basically, what I'm working on is my 20-minute short film for my writing class.
Nice.
And so typically throughout the week, I'm always busy doing something. So those few seconds where I get to stop or wait at a red light or wait on somebody to get their nails done or whatever, I pull out my phone and I start putting notes to how I'm gonna write out this particular movie. So now I'm just
Yeah.
taking stuff from the notes and I'm putting it on paper. I'm doing my beat sheet. And so that's what I'm working on right now is the beat sheet.
Great. Do you have any questions or you feel like you're good to go?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep going right now, and I'll develop some questions in a bit.
Okay. All right.
All
Sound
right.
good for the next 20 minutes?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that went a lot faster. At least it did for me.
Yeah, that was
Out
super
the
fast.
zone. How did it go?
I'm still going.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's I think it's like it's kind of it's not gonna have like the same ending as far as like how they get out of town. Like it's a little different, but I
Okay.
like it. Yeah, because I can't even remember how. I mean, I kind of remember how I wanted it to end, but I was just like going. Like,
Okay. So is there
you know
anything
that
different? What are the main things that you're absolutely holding on to, and did anything change?
what I'm holding on to is certain places where they're at leading up to them
Hmm.
leaving. What changes is how um Shantae how she winds up like defeating the mayor, and like how just like how that
Okay. How that
uh,
happens. Okay. Okay. So it's generally the same narrative, but there may be different characteristics that the characters have, maybe different superpowers that the character, not superpowers like supernaturally, but character-wise superpowers that the characters have that
mhm,
equip them specifically to be able to overcome this challenge.
yeah.
Cool.
And someone dies.
Did somebody die before?
I don't think so.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Someone dies.
Okay.
I probably will
So
be
there's
like
there's
happy.
something now where you are now where you feel like you wanted to heighten the stakes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is growth, my friend.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Do you have any questions? Or you have any blockages, or you feel like you're on a roll?
I feel like I'm on a roll. Um, yeah.
Okay. Well, I was kind of thinking of this as just like an exercise just for 20 minutes and then get back to what you were doing. But if you feel like you're on a roll with this, I would love to kind of see the completed version of this word vomit just to get it out, before you go back to the script, if you're
Yeah.
interested.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fine with me.
Okay.
Okay with me.
Car, how's it going?
It's going good. Had a question that came up about character. Should I, in my beat sheet, should I be describing my characters in real detail, or do I say that for my script?
Um,
Or
Generally,
yes, generally.
so generally I would have more description. Okay, so usually the beat sheet is kind of doesn't have heavy descriptions. It's
Yes.
more of a blow by blow, if you will. But in the screenplay, you're not going to have a ton of real estate for character descriptions either.
Oh, okay.
Uh, a sentence or two is mostly what
Okay.
you're looking at when you get to the screenplay version.
Yeah.
So when it comes to character development, I usually go to a completely different document so I can get everything out
Okay.
that
Got
I need.
So maybe just title a different document and just have all of my different because I hear a lot of people say, hey, you want to know like who your character is going to be, like what type of person, or if you have an ideal of a person or a character you've seen, like lay that out and have that idea. So should I have like a different paper that just like flesh out my characters for myself, kind of like how people do like the different scenes they plan on doing?
Yeah, yeah. So one way that I like to do it, and this is the way that I teach it in script from scratch, is sort of going through the character development process completely separately, and figuring out your story embedded in that. So the feature version of this, I usually have people do a story statement. This is the story of this character who wants this thing. Will they be successful, or will their internal obstacle prove too difficult? With a short, you don't really need a story statement because you're not completing the full arc of a narrative, but you
Right.
still do want to invest in knowing that same amount of information about your character. So it may help to do something like a character bio or some scenes that will never end up in your script that may happen in the future or may happen in the past that speak to like a pivotal moment. So if there's a pivotal moment in this character's life, it's not going to end up in the script because the story is not about that. But writing that out and fleshing that out and getting really intimate with the details of what happened that day really helps you get to know your character. The same way it would help you get to know a person. So I think either one of those really work. If you're short on time, which I don't think you are, but if you are, getting to the crux really quickly, figure out what a character wants and figure out what they're up against internally, and you have them really well.
Okay. And one thing too I want to share, even though this is I'm really early in this part of my journey, this particular short that I'm writing is eventually something I'm gonna stand into a feature because I think it's so.
Oh,
So
okay.
kind of like do it in like both ways, so that way I can still like use it and expand it out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So then you do want to sort of do extensive character development.
Okay.
Um, I would say the shortest version is that cocktail of what does somebody want externally, like a tangible want, and then what are they internally up against?
Okay.
Um, that's the shortest version. The next version is probably writing like a scene or two that are pivotal moments in that person's life. It may not have anything to do with the story you're telling, but the day, they didn't get chosen for volleyball, and then the day their teacher made fun of them in front of the whole class. These are pivotal moments. And when you write out those scenes, you become intimately acquainted with this character. So that's sort of the medium version. And then the longer version is just more extensive character development that may have to do with more their background, what their fears are, and that kind of thing. That may help the feature version.
All right, great. All
Yeah.
right, thanks. That's all I got.
All right. Do we feel good about going into the next 20 minutes?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
How did that go?
That was actually for me pretty good. I believe I got it.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You know what I love about this short outline is it's truncated. So it's not like a ton of actual information, but it tells the entire story.
Yeah.
And it
Mm,
makes sure that you have the ebbs and flows you need. So if it feels good in here, like, okay, this is high stakes enough, this is enough development for the characters in the world, then even these like few sentences is your entire script.
yeah. Because I think it was like really refreshing to hear you say that. Because because I have multiple characters that the group itself could be the main character. I said, oh, that's a wonderful because I'm over here like, okay, who's gonna be the head nigga in charge?
Yeah, it's hard. It's like, how do I arc five people? Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That really when once you said that, that helped me really figure out how to do like this emotional beat for the
Hmm.
story. So I was like, oh, the whole when I think about it, the whole time, all of them.
Just
Yeah,
wait.
that makes sense.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
wonderful.
super
Okay,
helpful.
good. Okay, so now that you have this, before I let you go out into the earth and maybe never see you again, what are the next steps for you? Like, there's multiple ways you can go about getting to the end of this feature.
Hmm.
Um, One could be going back to the page. Now that you have the story, you can kind of look at what you have and compare it to that and then start writing. Um, Another way would be to blossom this outline. So where now you have like these eight Roman numerals, right? Big
Uh-huh.
chunks. Then, so these are basically like big events, right? These aren't scenes yet. So if you were to blossom this outline, you would list the scene that is the status quo and all the scenes that need to happen between the status quo and the citing incident. That again for point of no return. Now you'll probably borrow from the scenes that you already have because most of this you already have.
Hmm.
So, but when you turn these events into scenes, so I would take your short outline. If you want to do that version, obviously you can go right to the page. But if you
Hmm.
want to do this version, I would take this chunk of text that you just wrote, copy and paste that into Final Draft or whatever your screenwriting software is, and then blossom it with scenes. And so you give them each a slug line, like you would in a screenplay. This is like a fresh version, like you would in a screenplay.
Hmm.
And when you start to blossom them into scenes, once you're done with that, I mean, you're like literally on the last door to being finished. And then you just go in and flesh out these scenes and you're done.
Hmm.
And the plus in that is you take out all of your confirmation bias.
Hmm.
Um, but either way would work.
Okay.
So I would say either one of those two pass, and I would love to hear how that goes.
Of course, yeah, because I'm coming back. This was great.
I'm so
This
excited for
was
you. Like,
absolutely great. Loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. Yeah, this was great.
wonderful. All right, Mr. S. Carr, how is it feeling? It's hard, right? Tell me.
It's I don't know. Writing is I didn't get to the 8 steps here that you put on the right. I
Okay.
was still trying to wrap up. But for me, more than anything, um, being in an atmosphere with people writing gives me the time to focus. But usually I'm at maybe Bourne. When I was in Atlanta, I was at Barnes and Noble for hours,
Mm-hmm.
writing and whatnot.
Oh.
And so being in an atmosphere is good. But as I've been like studying like other people's shorts, man, watching shorts just to try to get an understanding, because I'm not like in a traditional school to where we got a book and a textbook and it teaches all these theories and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I've been watching like other people's shorts, and most people's shorts have like maybe 2 characters, 3 characters, and there's a lot of dialogue and some music and whatnot. But mine's always every time I start writing and thinking through my what I'm gonna do, even with my 5 minute, I had way more characters than most people, so I'm kind of untraditional in my approach. And so this breakdown you gave her with the 8 steps, I had to right here with my little 20-minute short. I'm like, which one of my characters is going to be the main character? So I'll try to figure that part out. Well, I figured it out, and but it's like before then, like I was like, yeah, who's the main character, right? So this layout, even though it's for features and longer film, it still helped me to kind of like put things in the right perspective.
Okay, so I have a few thoughts for you. One is a lot of times when people take a short from a feature, they're just choosing like a specific moment.
Mhm.
And it could be like it's usually a small, subtle moment that makes the best short films, the most like award-winning short films. So it may make more sense for you to focus on the feature and figure out what small moment from that. It doesn't have to be because with the short, you're not telling a full story really. You are giving me a glimpse of your storytelling style and you're giving me a peek into the lives of these people.
Mhm.
So, I think script from scratch will be perfect for you just because it takes you through the whole
Right.
process.
Okay. And that's one of your courses?
Well, I do have a course, but it's a workbook on Amazon that like
Oh,
you
okay.
can work on your own. It's
Okay.
and you get to like write on it, which is what I like because something about the analog works really well.
Got it.
Are you an analog person too?
Mm-hmm.
What, Jewel, did you
Oh no,
have a oh
could I say something
yes,
that
please.
might be helpful? I know, like in grad school, like all we did was shorts, but when it came to like us writing our features, some of them took like their thesis film and made that like a proof of concept for the feature that they actually want to do. So maybe your mindset could be like, this is a proof of concept short for the feature film.
Okay.
That might
Okay.
help.
No, I like that. It makes
Thinking of
sense.
it like that.
Yeah, because it takes the pressure off of having to feel like you have to tell a full narrative.
Yeah.
Um, Now I heard you mention 20 minutes. Is that how long your short is?
The teacher gave us
Maybe.
15 minutes, but mine is gonna be 20. I already know. He
Oh
said
man,
15 to
I
16,
feel
but
like no shade against your teacher, but both of those are too long if
okay.
you want to play film festivals.
Okay.
Yeah,
It is
like
nearly
overlook.
impossible to program a 20-minute short film in a film festival. Not that that's have to be what you're going for. It's not the end all be all. You don't have to play a festival ever. But
Mm-hmm.
if you do want to play festivals, I do want to let people know what festival programmers are looking for. Because what happens is people will take your fee money and not tell you that they're not programming anything over 12 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
then you're just like, well, why didn't I get it? And nobody says it out loud.
Mm-hmm.
But
12
you
minutes.
yeah, so you want a sweet spot for a short to play a festival somewhere between like 7 and 13 minutes, maybe.
13. Okay.
There are festivals who do short shorts, like so 4 and under, like 2 to 4 minutes. Those are shorts. But
Mhm.
most shorts I see that program well are somewhere between like at 6 and 13, 7 and 13, something
Okay.
like that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the correlation to pages. So when we talk about getting your short down a certain amount of pages, when your short is at 12 pages, that's a good sweet spot for you. Um, I would say one help in terms of figuring out what slice of your story is not going to cause you to overwrite it
Hmm.
is taking a look at the themes instead of the plot. Because plot can easily expand. And with plot, you have to make sure you like tell a beginning, middle, and end and like close that circle. But when you think of themes, then you have a lot more flexibility on what that could look like narratively.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Or is that kind of like mumbo jumbo?
No, it makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes good sense.
Okay. Yeah, because I know you're at the beginning and like some people warn against being too career driven at the beginning. Um, However, I think it's harder to reel it back in when you don't have like industry standard parameters closer to the beginning. You know what
Yes,
I mean?
makes sense. Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay. I get what you're saying.
So I'm gonna put um I'm gonna put a link to Script from Scratch in the chat. I think this could be helpful. And if you're like, okay, I'm not ready yet for the workbook, at the very least, starting with this outline and then blossoming it. So starting with the outline and then going in and deciding, okay, I have a status quo. My status quo is that my character is unhappy with their job. Well, that's not just one scene, it's probably 3 scenes that make up that status quo, right? And then the
Yes.
inciting incident is they get fired for their job. So what happens between this and this? That's like maybe 3 or 4 scenes that make up that entire first sequence. And then, so that's your first act. And the second act is the point of no return. They're moving back home with their parents or whatever the point of no return is. Anyway, when you do this outline, then you blossom it into scenes, then you've completed your whole screenplay. And all you have to do now is flesh it out and you're done and you're ready for rewriting. And the book, of course, takes you through that entire process. So whichever one is your speed, I would say that might be the next step. Now, because you're in the class now, you may not have time to like write the whole feature just to have your next pages ready for class. So in the meantime, what I would be thinking about while you're doing this is what's the themes that you're exploring in your story? And then what's a visual representation for that theme happening on screen? And then I think you'll be able to like make that short more concise.
Okay. All
Mhm.
right. Well, thanks.
You're
Thanks.
welcome. I hope
Cool.
this helps. All right, guys. Well, this has been absolutely delightful. I got a lot done today. I hope you guys felt productive and I hope to work with you again.
All
Yeah.
right. Thank
Thank you.
you.
All
Thank you.
right. Have a good Saturday, guys.
All right. Y'all too. Good to
Bye.
meet both of you.
Bye.